and so that was an important event in my life then.
Did you have a brother or sister?
I was a single child.
Uh-huh.
I was the single child. I guess it was pretty difficult to have a child responsibly back then, with the world sort of having come down around your ears as an adult. Lost everything, and Daddy in his early times was very successful, and then when the financially successful, and when the Depression came, he lost everything. And that was the significance of the Green LaSalle. He lost the house, everything, but he wouldn't let that car go.
Mm-hmm.
That was the car. That was the time when the cars had velvet seat covers.
I remember that.
They had wooden spokes. They had little alcoves in the back seat where perfume bottles and mirrors were set. They were something. They were just wonderful. So anyway, that's that was the LaSalle that Daddy just wouldn't turn loose of.
How old were you when he died?
He died, I must have been around 28 or so, that range. I was just before, I was working, I'd been out of the Air Force for a few months, and I was working at TVA in Knoxville, and Mother called. And I was working as an engineer, a structural engineer. And Mother called and said Daddy had had this ruptured aneurysm. And by the time I got down to Chattanooga, which is about 100 miles away, he was already, he'd had the operation, he was going to make it through, so he died there in recovery. And that was the big whammy. That was really big. That was really, along with the loss of a few dogs along the way, and Daddy, that was another thing. There's that vacuum that fills us, as you all know, with when someone is taken out of our lives. It's quite a significant period in which we can really take advantage of that if we can live with it. It's the way we grow and deepen. That in the best of all worlds, that's what we're trying to do in poetry, as poets, is to, with the aid of this wonderful medium, to do that, to grow and to deepen our lives. I mean, what the hell else is there anyway? I mean, there's, we roll up a few dollars and do this and that, but our lives are really about deepening, tasting the full depth and breadth of our existence. And you can do that. I think art is a way of handling that. You handle it with your photography and your writings and things. So we all do it in our own ways. The mother often with her children. Profound, really profound. So that's our way of really being deeply here. Deeply here.
Did your mother ever get to know your children?
Mother knew Gregory. Mother knew Gregory. She was She was very understanding, helpful through that time. I was already sort of one of these raving successes in my architectural work in Vermont, and she came and she was very, very tender and very helpful.
She was alive when he died?
She was alive.
Mm.
Yeah. And then she went on, she died when she was 79. Back in those days, we didn't know that cigarette smoke was bad for you.
Mm.
So father smoked for years, and mother died of secondary emphysema
Mm-hmm.
from breathing his smoke. So that's how all that ended up.
Did she stay down in Tennessee, or?
Yeah, she stayed in Tennessee, and she was, she was really genuinely insufferable. So we used to, whatever wife I was with at the time, Annabelle being my third, we would bring her up from Tennessee and give her a 3-day round trip. And when she arrived, she was very, very sad that she was only going to stay 3 days. And by the 3rd day, she was really ready to go because she was completely a fish out of water in our world. And all of her friends loved her. God, she was beloved of all her friends, and she was the director of the choir for 30 years. And she really helped put me through Macaulay, which was expensive, with teaching piano and giving voice lessons. So.
Did she finally approve of you in the end? You were successful. You were doing architecture?
Well, this will add a bit of humor to Mother. That Mother had no idea what I did. All she knew is that I was successful. And she would take a handful of my brochures when she would come to Vermont and hand them out to her friends. And it was a way of self-aggrandizement, really. It didn't have that much to do with me, but she never knew what I was doing. So when she would come, I would have one of my very valued assistants, a woman named Erna Brousseau, to take her off my hands and show her around and be with her, talk with her and listen to her, while I went about my business, because I had a big load that I was carrying at the time, and I'd come home at night and we'd have dinner and so on. But during the day, Erna would take care of her, and Erna's still alive too. She's a wonderful Austrian woman. So anyway, that's what Mother knew about my career. So what else can I say to?
What was it that she didn't know? As a person who is artistic, you would have thought that she would somehow figure out what you were up to. It wasn't as if this would have been in the 60s, probably, right?
She just didn't have time. She was so involved with her own life.
Uh-huh.
And she, when Father died, well, this is another Mother story. After this, this talk is about Mother, but Mother plays a big part. first and second year at Harvard, father had died a couple of years earlier, just before I went to Harvard. And so Mother had been very resentful about Father even after his death, because he had left me a very small life insurance, left me beneficiary of a very small life insurance policy, $3,000, $76 a month. And Mother was very resentful because she'd paid for the premiums during that time. So anyway, I thought that between my first and second year at Harvard, I'd go on up to Greenland as a engineer. I got a job up there for the summer.
On the island or country of Greenland.
Yeah, really. By God, Greenland was really up there, past Labrador, where the last trees are growing. And so I went up there and worked as a civil engineer in the field that summer. And we worked 70-hour weeks and got paid for 85 hours, time and a half. And so I made some big money. So I came on back and paid off Mother's mortgage for a house. Paid the whole damn thing off. And that within a very small length of time, she remortgaged the house for a lifetime membership in Arthur Murray Dance Studio. So you get the picture now, Mother. So anyway, that's that was Mother. So there we are. Yeah. Was that anyway?
She never remarried, huh?
She never remarried. She was a hot ticket, you know. She was, I guess she must have been in her 60s or so when Father died, and she was still a good looker, and she danced well, and she sang, and she was the life of every party, and she had a lot of guys after her, but she was absolutely dedicated to my father until her death. She was a one man woman, really. Although she allowed people to take her out in the Arthur Murray circumstance, I'll call it, afforded yearly cruises where they'd take the whole studio, and of course it's all paid for. And she'd take the cruises, and each person would have, each woman would have her escort, which was Arthur Murray, one of the teachers, and they would lavish her with flowers and dance with her at night and so on. And it was a highlight of her life. She went on, I don't know, 20 years or so after Father died as Arthur Murray. And she had, when she died, we had numerous cups for winnings of dance contests in the house there. We still have a few of those around different places. So.
Would you say she was a happy person? Was this strategy? Did it work for her?
She was much happier after Father died than with him, because Mother was always either on him or on me about doing better. She was a driver, really. And but she cooled out pretty well when Father died, and as she said, I'm certainly not going to get married again and have some man bossing me around. That was a quote, direct quote.
Uh-huh.
So that's how she felt about
Do you think she slept with any of these?
Absolutely not.
She was religious?
She was religious to a fault, you know.
Uh-huh.
Three times a week to the church, prayer meeting on Wednesday night. I was a beneficiary of a lot of that church stuff. So
What kind of religion was it?
it was Methodist.
Methodist.
Yeah,
okay.
Southern Methodist. And that's how it.
Did you rebel against that too, or were you part of it for a while?
Yeah, I was. One of her sayings to me that rings in my ear is, she'd say, "Robert, you think you're the only one in step and the world is out of step." So anyway, that pretty well sums that up.
You know, I think I shared with you the article that I wrote about the creative architect study,
Yeah.
in which they said that this group of certified creative architects, it included my dad and Ian Pei and Louis Kahn and so forth, that all of them shared the business of marching to their own drummer. That this characteristic of having a strong aesthetic commitment and being able to withstand the lack of support of other people,
barrage of non-support,
was really important.
Well, Rook is a perfect example of that. That he was abused. His mother raised him as a girl, even named him Maria.
Oh, that's right, Rainer Maria. Uh-huh.
And he was only given his additional name Rainier by one of his lovers, I think, to later become one of his wives. But he had just a hell of a time with his mother. But she treated him like a girl, talked to him like a girl, named him like a girl, dressed him like a girl. So he had a big heap to overcome. And he did. He did well. I have, that's one of the books that I've carried with me on this journey is the translations by Stephen Mitchell of Rilke's work. Very, very fine. The elegies are probably his finest work. Those are the ones that I respond to most. Here's this poem that I found finally about Gregory. It's called That Day. That day the swallows, the swallowtail, lit on my arm. Down here in the world somewhere, where I was writing a few things down in the morning's new light. It filled my cup with news, just beyond the reach of a festered old grief, folding its wings up and down, up and down. In the sunrise over the celandine and thorns of my blackberries, in the faded memory of that long ago day, when we put his ashes in the hard ground, lifted them down into the hole I drove with a shovel and a wrecking bar, up in the corner of the field where the stone walls come together to change direction. That time when the butterfly hung around my chair all day. So that field up there, I've referred to it from time to time in my poetry. As you know, looking up from the kitchen there where we sit in the morning, you can look through those windows and that beautiful field. Well, he's buried up there in the corner, and then that's where I'd like to go down too, up there.
So, coming back to the architecture, your Professor Fabian encouraged you. Did you come to him with this saying, maybe I ought to go into architecture, or did he say, why don't you try? Or
No, my venture into architecture happened almost like falling off the edge of the pier into the water, which I did one day in front of a lot of Papua New Guineans, and not one of them laughed. Not one laughed. They were standing, they're teenage, it was amazing. Such a clumsy act, you would have thought that they would howl with laughter. Not one cracked a smile, given this old British stiff upper lip stuff, you know.
mm-hmm.
But anyway, Fabian said that, in effect, like Joseph Campbell, that I should follow my heart. And my venture into architecture really was unlike your father. Up there in the country, I had this sense that I could build a community. I never thought of myself doing more than one community, but I could build a community and build it there in the mountains and preserve the mountain and give people an opportunity to live in this glorious place in Vermont that was within driving distance of, at the time, about 85 million people. And, you know, and the first ski lift was just going in at Killington, had just gone in. And so it was brand new up there. We were all new, and so we started that venture, really, for $12,500. We bought the 25 acres of, or 100, actually it was 100, maybe 125 acres. And we started with 65 acres in the farmhouse, and that was $25,000.